How's it going, everybody? Happy Tuesday. We're gonna hopefully pick up a couple different, little, I guess, pun intended, streams of work. We did a few different times these pieces, and I think I've got enough in place that I can hopefully put things together and get the last bit of what we were trying to do, at least close enough to the point where I can take it over the finish line. So yeah, we'll do some patch files, some preview versions maybe, and see what we can do with a little bit of upstream work to implement the feature that we've been looking for, and that would be specifically within the TODO app that we have. The TODO app is more than just like a bunch of checkboxes, because it wires up to, or the intent is that it's going to wire up to OBS, which is the streaming software that I use. And with that, we should be able to get timestamps. So when I cross things off, we'll be able to make basically like chapter markers directly from that like to-do list. So it'll be, the intent is that, and I've been a little bit off and on about being good about actually filling it out for reasons. But the intent is that it provides a good overview of what we're going to talk about today. And it's a little bit organic, where we can move things around and shift it as we go. But then it also is a nice thing that I can easily grab information from and then use it to create the chapter markers in the YouTube videos. And then that in turn also makes it easier to reference both for y'all watching later on. If you're not watching live, or you're coming back to the video after having watched it, it's nice to have those cut points where we can quickly jump to them. But as I work towards being better about releasing non-live content, so video and shorts, having that also helps me, because I can quickly reference back to what we did or where we did it, etc., etc. So I don't have to go digging through hours of content to figure out what we did last time, because what we do on stream tends to evolve over weeks, and by the time it's to a point where I think it makes sense to package up as a single video, memory isn't the best. Don't get old, folks. It's just easier to have a place to go back to and quickly reference, rather than having to dig through hours of footage, basically. So that's what we're going to try to do today. On a slightly different note, click over to the channel, wherever the button is down here, maybe. I don't know where it is on mobile if you're watching there, but I have next week's stream scheduled already. We've teased it a little bit. We're kind of continuing on this idea of what does it look like to swap out the system web view for an alternative. And part of that is exploring the work that has been done, but also seeing what are the options. So we had a couple of weeks ago was we explored Verso. We brought Tony on the stream. We did a couple streams afterwards experimenting with that work, and I still need to look at Tony's PR with adjustments. I think we can potentially have at least some pieces, if not all of it, working with this TODO app that we're going to be looking at today. But what we're looking at next week is CEF, the Chrome Embedded Framework, which is basically, or excuse me, Chromium Embedded Framework. It is basically one of the building blocks, not specifically CEF, but Chromium is one of the building blocks that Chrome is built upon. And that same building block can then be used as a web view-ish type thing. So the same thing that the web view is doing, CEF can also do. CEF is probably the most common alternative to WebView. The WebView has kind of gone in and out of like it being something that gets picked off the shelf first. There's certain situations where the system web view makes a lot of sense, but then there's also situations where basically embedding a whole browser with your project also makes sense. So we're bringing in Bill. Bill Avery has been working with and pushing projects forward within the Tori org for some time, and is currently sitting on the board, right? It's one of those mornings, I guess. And has been involved in multiple capacities, including being on the Tori board along with myself. So we're going to bring Bill on. We're going to go through potentially some of the past work, but also what Bill's been pushing forward with with CEFRS and how we could potentially use that within Tori. So I am excited for that. And with that, we're gonna we sort of have these like two paths right now, or three-ish: build or improve the system web view situation, but also provide the alternatives, which would be CEF or Servo / the work being built on top of that, which is Verso. And having options and having alternatives will be nice, because depending on the operating system you're deploying to, the options that you have and the performance profiles and how that works will end up differing. So there might be situations where for the same app, you may choose System WebView for some operating systems. You may choose CEF for other ones. So making that process fluid and continuing to improve the DX there, I think, is going to be a big win and be one of the next big steps that really push the story forward. So that's a lot of words to say. I am excited. That being said, I forgot to share the linky in here. So if you're following this thread, I am posting it right now. Whoa, no, not that one. Where we want this? We want this. I am sharing the link in a thread. If you're in the Tori Discord, I've got a thread in the showcase where I have for some time been sharing links to the stream to, the folks that are interested will end up seeing and have a place to know when the next one is starting or whatnot. But that being said, we do also have a Discord, and I've been expanding it over the days and weeks. I would love to see if folks join. There we go. Yeah. Check that out. If you're into the Discord thing and you want to continue conversations and talk about the stuff that we've done on stream or in the videos, I would love to see you. So now that we got all that out of the way, let's pop on over to this. And we do need, here we go. Yeah, we got it up. Oh, I forgot to move over my keyboard again. Goodness me. Okay, I guess we're gonna do that real quick. So I've been using a, to me, relatively new keyboard. We want this. It is a split keyboard. And I, for the most part, do most of my work, like the thing that pays my bills. I do that on my Mac, and I use this keyboard there. But what we're streaming at right now is, if you can't tell from operating system looking bars at the bottom, we're in Windows. So I got to do the swap, which, since this keyboard's new and this setup is on the newer side, I forget to do. It's getting to the point where, like, I need a checklist of all the stuff I need to remember to do, but also some of it's become a meme at this point. I still don't think the exclamation mark 3D works. I like, functionally, I think it works. I think I just need to turn it on the right spot, but I just have not made it a priority. There's been too much other things going on. But we'll make stuff happen. All right, so we've got our, what is with this cord? I've got too many cords. I need to take a week to just like catch up on stuff and organize it. But eventually. Okay, so we've got, speaking of to-do apps, we're going to be looking at this today. And what we want to look at is we did a spike. So we'll say pull up the spike for WebSockets. To OBS, and we did that on stream. I think we ended up just doing it directly in functions. The intent was to wrap it up a little bit nicer, but we were running into issues with the Vite cache, and I wasn't able to just like edit things in node modules. I figured out, at least on the set of versions that I had spiked it out on, I figured out a way we can, why doesn't it have here? The ordering of this is sometimes weird. I figured out a good process to do that. Some of that might be to do with the newer version of Vite. But I got a patch file in here, and I have something working to where we can kind of build off of this. So I'll probably grab this, apply the patch, and then we can work from there. I think what will be will end up being the process that we go with. I suspect part of it is just newer Vite, but what I was doing was running yarn, or excuse me, npm Vite, or in this case, I guess we got start, but -- force. That was the important piece. And I think we had seen that before or looked at it, but it didn't do what we were expecting it to, or maybe we looked at it and didn't think that would be the way to do it. But I was using it for this, and it seems to work pretty well. So I think we'll work off of a patch file, see if we can combine a couple of these bits together that I have done. This I did off stream. If we can combine that and the other things we did on stream, and if we can get it in a reasonable working state. I also got preview versions working in this repo. So if we look at, I guess this one will have it. Stack Blitz and some of the folks that work here have put out, they don't, I guess this would be the link, eh? They put out this package called package pr new, or package.pr.new, and it's kind of like in some ways it's like an alternative to npm, but the intent is an ephemeral. So what does that mean? That means that, like, we have published, interesting that it's not showing up in the search. The like if you look at Vite here, each one of these is a separate publish. So the intent is that you publish things here and you do it in the actual, I mean, generally you see it in the actual PR, so that, well, every time you make a commit to the PR, you get a new version, and you can, it makes it a lot easier to just use downstream. The one of the nice things with Rust, because I know y'all have been in and out of Rust if you got into Tori, right? Their like building and packaging system is built in a way where it works really well to not only pull something from crates, which is like the deployed or the published version, but easily pull from your local or from like a Git reference. And the reason that works well is because it ends up building all of those crates on your system. So it's shipping source code to crates.io. It has source code in GitHub or wherever, or on your local drive. And so it doesn't really matter where it is because it's always source code and it always has to compile it. So it ends up working really well because I can reference a branch or a specific commit on GitHub, and it just grabs it and builds it just as if I would have grabbed it from crates. Yes, build times are a thing, but also like that process is really nice. And the reason it doesn't really exist in the npm / JavaScript, etc. ecosystem is because there is that expectation that there's some amount of building before you actually go to publish. So you don't necessarily, I mean, some projects do ship the source, but the source can be in JavaScript, or it can be in TypeScript, or in years past, like there was CoffeeScript. So there's all these things that eventually get to the same point, but it's potentially a process to get to that point. So when you say, I want to publish this thing to npm, yeah, like I was saying, maybe we'll take a hot minute to see if we can fix it real quick. But until then, it will continue to be the meme, and this is as close as we're going to get. So the reason it doesn't work in the JavaScript ecosystem is because there's some expectation that you're building it, or the piece that you end up wanting to use or pull in needs to be in a potentially compiled state. And that means that if you ship the source, you now have to know how to build the source. And that's just not consistent. One of the nice and lovely things about the JavaScript ecosystem is that it's relatively easy for folks to get to the point where they're publishing something and experimenting with and trying stuff out. And some of the other build systems out there have enabled that even more. Like Babel was a big, it was a thing that really pushed the ecosystem forward. But it meant that, like, to get to the same JavaScript file, and same because there's shims and polyfills and all this other stuff that potentially go into it, but the deploy target is not consistent. So what you're building for is not consistent because we have Node, we have Dino, we have V8 isolates, we have the browser, and we have potentially multiple ways we can build for the browser. And for each one of those, there's like CJS versus ESM. So the output possibilities are numerous. The input possibilities are also numerous. There's Vite and Parcel and Webpack and what's the Rust version? RSPack. Then there's the pieces that go into that, like Rollup. Rollup used to be a little bit more mainline, but it's has gained a lot of popularity just in the fact that it's driving what Vite is doing. Vite has gotten a lot of popularity because it's sort of like a meta piece almost at this point, and it's kind of becoming into the point where you can build meta frameworks on top of Vite, which is built on top of ES build and rollup. There's options, and then you start to get into like the things that try to handle your whole tooling, like Dino, which in some ways is very much different than Node. And there's like Biome, which I think has been renamed now. I haven't checked into that recently, but long story short, the possible ways you can build things and the possible targets that you would build for are numerous. So other than just having a thing that contains build files, there's really no great other way to do it. So long story short, they're doing that. Basically, you wire this up to your through GitHub Actions as one option, and you publish out a thing on every PR. So that's a lot of talking to say we can pull this up, potentially wire a couple pieces together, and if we get to that point, we can maybe push a version up and get a preview version. I guess I'll say preview versions. Let's cross that off. I like crossing stuff off. We talked about it. Boom. All right. So where did we do that? Maybe that's the first bit here. Let's go back. So I've got this up. This is the patched version. Like if we look at this patch file here, I effectively just added in the ability to do app.manage. There wasn't too much code that went into it, and it's not like perfectly implemented. But like this is what we were intending to do in Stream. I just couldn't get it to be like the workflow to be consistent enough to iterate quickly. But now that I figured out some of that, I was able to do this. So basically we can write a little effection resource. You can see here, which is effectively just we wrap a thing, we give it a function, then we wrap it with an operation, and this can encapsulate and handle and potentially restart or retry connections and just have this encapsulated piece that does all that in the background. But then it returns a handle. So the yield provide socket means that we downstream would be able to use that specific resource. So it makes it convenient to package up into a piece that you can ensure works as a piece. But then we can sort of like put the handle wherever we need it with this setup, which is kind of cool. So in any of our any of our actions or, and the actions end up trickling down into the actual app, we're able to basically do like the sending and receiving here. So I think this will be nice. But this is what we were trying to do on stream a handful of streams ago. And we had gotten as far as, now the question is going to be, I literally put a bullet point for pulling this up because I actually don't recall off the top of my head where we put the thing. It might be in the stream to do. We can go here and we'll do a stream to do. And let's look at, I don't think I put it in a PR. Oh, I did. Go me. Okay. And you can see it's been a hot minute since we looked at this. in part because I wanted to I need to get this work upstream rolling, and we've made progress there at least. And this is that verso. We did that over a couple streams, and then Tony helpfully made some tweaks and got some more of the stuff working. So I still need to like go back and get that all merged in and rolled in with this. But that's on my non-stream to do. That's on the normal to-do list. We'll get there though. So here, we did this over a couple streams, and I pushed it up as a work in progress. So effectively, I think what we do is we end up pulling this in, and we pulled in patch package. We didn't end up actually wiring anything up. And we are on beat 6. So maybe we just didn't use the force function before, because that seemed to work pretty well when I was working with it. Granted, that was also on Mac, so hopefully it's not system related. We want stream to do. Yeah, we're going to get fetch and get checkout, OBS WebSocket spike. Actually, let's do a get checkout main and just update this. Okay. Let's see what we can get rolled up here. And now what this is doing is I committed up the dev stuff, right? Let's just double check I did that. Because before we start this, why isn't this scrolling? Before we start this, I want to just make sure I'm not going to screw up my quote unquote production version of the stream plugin. It doesn't look like, why is this? The scrolling is being weird in here. I can't scroll here. If I'm over this, it's just scrolling this, but it's so small that like I can't see it very well. It's just a weird, like the height is just at a perfect amount that it's awkward. Okay. I'm not seeing the bits that I added to make it a easy to do dev work. I mean, I guess I don't care if it's pulled out as a separate PR, but it probably makes sense to add this in regardless. Yeah, like, what? That's so weird. I don't know. It feels like the scrolling changed there, and I just don't know what. Don't know what the deal with that is. All right, let's bump up to. Okay, I don't need this. I think there's a different or otherwise updated version of VersoView, so I'm gonna just delete it. And the reason it's coming in here is because I had it in a branch, and that branch had it get ignored. But when I switched back to this one, I don't have that same get ignore, so errors. Is that all we want to change? Why do we have typefest in here? Come on. Me. 2 months ago. Why did I put that in there? Oh, yeah. So we soft fork from this, and it was using typefest. Got it. Okay. Okay. I think we could eventually remove that, but that's going to be future work, not today. Okay. That should all be fine enough. Okay. We do want to, we'll do a quick install here before I forget about it. And then let's copy over the bits from here that um so what I'm specifically looking for is we've got a couple places where we hard code a path, and that path, before we run it, we want to make sure that we don't use that hard coded path. Um, okay, plugin polyfill. I don't need the polyfill plugin. I want this. So we switch this from visible, from false to true. And we did that just so that with this app specifically, we have it set to when you start it, it just starts up in the background. So the intent is that it's kind of like a long running process that like I can do. Actually, does my shortcut work? Nope. It would be like an alt. I think it's like alt space. So this should work. There we go. Yep. Basically, it's just like a global shortcut key away. So from anywhere, I can do this, pull it up, do whatever I need to do, fill it out, and then go back to whatever I was doing. Because as soon as I click away, I don't know if you can hear that, but when it loses focus, it just goes back to being hidden. So when I actually do development on it, then it's kind of nice to set the, oh, I do have it set visible true here. Okay, so that one's fine. But then the other bit we do want to double check on is those hard-coded paths. So set up tray. We disabled a bunch of stuff in this PR specifically because we weren't sure like what would work in Verso. So some of this would likely end up coming back, like these bits. These are like test functions that we had because we needed to polyfill international .duration format because it wasn't available in Verso. But here, store setup. We need to do this real quick. Source story, store setup, and we're just going to tweak this default file name to be something slightly different so I'm not overwriting the thing that I care about. Okay, so I've got a live. That's I'm actually gonna make that dev because this is gonna end up being like a dev mode thing. And Tory store would be files -dev. Yeah, because we want a different file list as well. So a different file reference, it will create this file if it doesn't exist. But then this is the store that contains the list of files that it's aware of. So I think we are all set there. And this is the other place. So the intent is that eventually we will, okay, it looks like I actually had it all changed enough that it would have been fine if I run this. But the intent of tweaking these is just so we're not overwriting anything that we care about. But also I need to make that configurable anyways. So in some ways it's kind of a pin to do because if anybody else other than me wants to actually use this, then hard-coded paths aren't really going to work out very well. We need to have some sort of settings or something that they can like configure this root folder at least. The names of the files we could potentially keep consistent, or at least in a configurable way make them consistent. But in reality, as long as it's in that one phone, why are you making noises? As long as it's in that one that file list, it doesn't really matter what it's called. We just need to be able to recall it. So as long as it somehow gets itself into here, then it'll be fine. So in some ways we could do any kind of file name, like it could live anywhere that this app has access to, as long as we would provide like an open functionality. So open this file and then it does all the same parsing. Okay. I don't think we need anything else specifically from here because we're on the branch. So we should be able to just run this and it starts working. But before, well, working, it will, or at least what we had will in theory run. So we made this use WebSocket. It is, I mean, I say use in a very light manner, because some of this is like code that we soft forked effectively. In reality, we don't need a bunch of this work. Some of this is from like these bits I think are potentially upstream code. This we basically hard coded in here. So part of what we were running into was Effection is a project, an open source project put out by Frontside, which is the company that I work for, and the selling point is structured concurrency in JavaScript, which is potentially big words if you have spent most of your time in the JavaScript world. Structured concurrency is I guess in some ways like a paradigm that has been implemented in many of the other languages out there, and it hasn't really gotten to JavaScript yet. I think because async await works fine enough that people haven't felt. I mean, leading up to that, there was lots of work being done, but like once async await got there, it was like the 70%. It worked fine enough that it's difficult to, unless you're having a specific problem and you're in that like last 30% or whatever that wasn't well handled, there's just not a reason to change. So in some ways, Effection is helping to deal with that last 30%, but it can cover the anything that async await can do, it can do, and potentially better. All of that being said, we have a couple of like helper utilities, which we call there's a, I guess we can pull it up. There's a repo called effection slash, or excuse me, front. So, oh well, I will fix it in a sec. The front side slash effection X. So basically the idea is these can work potentially in multiple versions of effection. And it's sort of a like more of a community maintained collection of pieces. So we actually pulled from here. There is a WebSocket one that has some effort put into it. But we need a little bit of functionality that doesn't exist in here yet. So part of that is this like initial handshake connection that it makes with OBS is not like those, like this kind of stuff isn't, and I don't know that it needs to be, but it isn't. It isn't like I don't think there's a spec around it. So everything's, or at the very least, everything tends to implement it slightly differently. So the work that we'd have to push upstream into this would be to enable those like different situations where we want to do a handshake. So there might need to be like a handshake function or something like that we can say, in this case, we need these bits. Do that for me, please. So we got this working. This handshake happens. It's not some of these pieces I swapped out just to get things working in testing. So we might be able to clean this up a little bit. But what we end up getting here is a resource. So we're getting from usesocket a resource. And that's what we had in this other example. This might have actually been pulled upstream too. Subscribers add with resolvers. I know there's a with resolvers function. That might be Affection version 4. We're using StarFX, which at the moment is on Affection version 3. Affection version 4 is the last version published is an alpha, but it's getting like real close to a beta. And we being myself, but also a handful of other folks have been working on updating a couple of these other downstream from Affection libraries. And so we've got some work here. Yeah, I mean, we got a bunch of draft bears, and most of those are mine. But we're upgrading from V3 to V4, and in some, like, it's on Affection V3, but like an early version of Affection V3, like an alpha or something like that, or a beta, I don't remember. So the effort to go from the beta to V4 has been more than I was anticipating. So we've been pushing forward stuff a bunch there, trying to get it in a good place. So we've got a lot of like in-flight work with this, and I think it'll be really nice when we actually get to the point where it's not in flight anymore. But that's part of what we're doing today. Okay, so that's a lot of talking to say. We've got use WebSockets. We've got this, which is a thunk that no, not that one. Where do we do use WebSockets? It's got to be pulled in one of these like base ones, right? Okay, let's search. Where is this used? Setup. Got it. So what we were doing here, and this is part of what we were like having trouble with. This is what we were shooting to do. We wanted to make yep. Okay, I remember some of this. Like we want this. And this I think will work fine. But we ended up having to like wrap it in a run, so a whole separate context to then pass it to use. So we were like doing all of this extra wrapping work. So now what we can basically do is a thunks.manage. And once we apply the patch, we should be able to then basically just give it a use WebSocket. We still will need to do these bits somewhere, so we might need to do a little bit more upstream work after we've applied that patch. But we got a base to work off of, so I'm hopeful that we can, in the next hour, knock most of that out. Okay, let's grab that patch. We don't have. Okay, we do have a patches directory. So we need to go back to this and grab our patch file here. I guess I'll do this. Copy. And Actually, here, can I just download? Maybe that's the way to go. Download it and drag and drop. There we go. That I think worked pretty well. So now if we try applying it, we should be able to do and we might have this already. Oh, we don't. Are we actually even using that patch file then? I guess I've only built it locally, so I suppose so. And we don't even have a interesting. Okay, we have it as a dependency. We must have been doing like npx patch package or something like that. So if we look at the docs for patch package, well, I didn't actually copy that, but it's fine. Pat npm patch package. It recommends doing a post install, which if you're doing a library, maybe don't do this. If you're doing something less library-ish, yeah, it's fine. Like in this case, this is probably going to be fine. We want post install. If we're running this in CI or locally, we'll want those patches to be applied. And like our delivery, we end up building and bundling the thing from this repo, and then like the deployed thing is the binary, so it's like the bundled piece. So we don't have anything downstream that would also need to apply the same patch. Once we've applied the patch and built the assets, then it's good to go. They've been wrapped in there already. Like the edited version has been wrapped in there already. Okay, so normally we would create a new patch file that way. But in this case, we actually have, I guess I can just run post install, right? In this case, we actually do have, okay, patch package cannot apply the following file. Okay. So we got potentially a couple pieces here, because I don't think we've actually been running this for a while. Yeah, I think, updated and never removed or dealt with the fact that the positioner plugin has changed. I'm going to delete that because I don't think we need to do that anymore. But we still do need to apply. We still need to deal with the fact that the StarFX patch did not apply. It cannot apply the following patch. Try removing node modules and trying again. I wish it gave a little bit more information why it failed. Because I think this should end up theoretically working. We've got a node modules, and we have StarFX, a node module, StarFX, ESM, so it's there. So this is potentially part of it. The git diffs, those diff references are probably not valid. So that's fine. We will end up just having to manually apply it. We're going to be messing around in here anyways, so not the end of the world. We're looking at ESM query thunk.js. ESM query thunk.js. And we're looking at the, okay, so we also updated the d.ts. Makes sense. Like it wouldn't technically be required, but having TypeScript help out, especially if it's not too big of a deal, like doing this dropping this in somewhere is not the end of the world, and having the types not yell at you everywhere is kind of worth that little effort, because it should. Whoop, I went in the wrong one. We need thunks. Dot detail. Oh, not types. I did it again. This one. This is what we want. It's not the end of the world to drop this in here. Whoop. We need to do let's do a save without formatting because I don't want Predator to run. And then in here we do, you can see like we've already been mucking around with it a little bit. And this might actually be part of the reason that it wasn't working, because we've already edited it. Yeah, we've got a bunch of keep alive. Okay. The other benefit of, and I've already got this here too. So the other benefit of the fact that I've been doing some upstream work to update to v4 means that I'm also much more confident in where things are in these files. Actually, let's just do this. So we have here a resource map. We made basically this like little object here. The intent with this is we can have multiple resources. So you may have, in this case, we're doing WebSockets. You might potentially have multiple WebSockets. So you could have a WebSocket connection to like multiple endpoints. So you can use the same resource, but spin it up multiple times, pointing to different endpoints. And then like anything in here, I think the bulk of these are actually resources. I think task buffer is, tiny exec is. Some of these would be less useful, like I guess tiny exec and maybe watch. Those wouldn't really make sense to pull in into star effects, because usually star effects is a front end only thing. But I do actually have star effects for some back end work as well. In which case doing a watch might actually make sense, which feels weird, but that's the kind of flexibility that I appreciate, honestly. It's not the type of flexibility that gets in the way, but it ends up just being very helpful. So manage resource. We want to, got a phone call. I was making sure wasn't something I needed to actually pay attention to. We want to say key and resource. This one's a little bit interesting because here, visors. What's visors? So these are like supervised things. I guess in theory we could put them in register any things created after signal is available. So part of this is we want to register the thunk, and then in there it does this. It calls us keep alive. So visors would be it's like short for supervisors. So the speaking of side effects, one of the things that having infection here ends up enabling is that we can do like parallel running work with cleanup really nicely and do it well. And in this case, there's a thing called supervisors and keep alive. So the combination of, well, keep alive actually has within it the supervise and calls them a supervise. And what that's doing is saying, keep this thing running and wrap it in supervise. And basically, if it crashes or fails or something happens, just restart it. So it's in some ways kind of like a, you can think of it like Kubernetes like, where you say, hey, here's a list of things I want running. Just ensure that it is going to continue running. Which ends up not being that. Like, it sounds like potentially a big ask to write the code to do that. It actually is not with affection. It's not bad at all. So we could potentially look at doing that. Um, so we're gonna have a list of. I guess maybe what we do is we end up doing basically the same thing here. We have an object that's called resources. We start it up and do the keep alive for those as well. That's probably going to actually be the call here. So we're not going to muddy up this because those are a separate consideration. The thing that it's supervising there is, if we look at this, it's actually like supervising the specific thunk. So the Star FX is in some ways like a spiritual successor to Redux Saga. And you get these like functions that take a payload and do the actual work. So from from the front end, you're not actually firing off functions to do work. You're firing off payloads that then are grabbed or pulled or listened for. So think very like event-based system kind of thing. You fire off these payloads to, in theory, wherever, but generally you fire it off to the running context, and that picks up on this payload and then takes the payload and applies it with the appropriate function. And that function can potentially kick off more of these payloads, or it can update values in the store. So in this case, it's doing a supervisor to watch and ensure that that actual thunk continues to like be listening, essentially. So I don't think we want to muddy that up too much. And part of that too is the effectively what we've got here is like a middleware, a set of middlewares that each one of these payloads is run through. So send off a payload. Here's a list of functions that it should run through. Go through each one of those, very much like you're doing like middleware handling with I can never think of that web server. What's the what are some web servers? What Fastify, Koa, Express. There we go, Express. There's a lot of overlap, I think, at this point between all these, but it's in the same vein of that, where you can have multiple middlewares that handle the like same endpoint, returning the same value. Yeah, Express. Express is the one. For like, I've been doing so much affection lately that anytime I go, what is that one web server? All I can think of is a affection. It's like I know it starts with E, and it kind of looks the same on paper if you squint. But yeah, so Express has the idea of a middlewares, so that's a good place to handle like auth or whatnot, or do like a logger. So every time you handle a response, it ends up piping it through potentially multiple middlewares, and then eventually hits the handler that returns the values to whatever service requested it. Kind of the same way here. You can specify a bunch of middlewares, and we can actually see it here. We've got thunks.use. We're basically adding a bunch of middlewares. So the WebSocket ends up in some ways kind of being at least with this setup, a middleware. But like, we don't. This is a lot of work to just get it to handle a separate thing, and it's not super flexible. So that's why I was pushing on this thunks.manage. Because then rather than it just being in the middleware stack, it's like it's its own separate little piece, which I think is more appropriate for what we're trying to do with these resources. Okay, so I think we do this. This feels good. That gives us exactly what we had previously implemented, right? I needed to put it here because we're using the API. In this case, I don't actually need to because we're only using thunks in this one. A thunk is like the base level piece. API is itself built on top of thunks, but with a bunch of middlewares already wired up to it. So okay, what time we got? We got about an hour still, a little bit less. If we look at star FX, let's look at the endpoints, I guess. So here's a create API. And then you start giving it a bunch of middlewares. And basically this is, here's the schema that's going to be used for all these routes. And here's the base URL, so you don't have to specify that every time you call it. And here is this, when we do a get.users, let's cache that information. And then here's the actual like post request. So when we call this, and you can see the next, if you used like Koa or whatnot, middlewares there. I think Koa is generator based, right? It's not just executing this function. It's actually running through this whole middleware stack. So you end up getting, it'll run through this, and then it'll go through this and go through this, so that by the time you get to this context object, it has information from all of these middlewares that have been potentially run. So long story short, we're only using thunks. We're only using this base piece in this case because we don't need to do calls to any APIs. So the value of using the API is nil. So we don't use it. So I think all we need is these couple line changes. Itchy nose. I think we're set. Let's do let's make an updated patch file to make sure that's in a good spot. We got this. It isn't going to work perfect because we're not actually, we do need to like yield or otherwise start the resource. But we'll come back to that. So let's do a npm run. I guess we'll do just npx patch package. Well, you can see it's got our old patch in there still. Patch package star effects. So let's generate a new one. It should update what we have currently, which will be good. And then we'll be able to switch over to some of this. Do I have that? Yeah, env.local. Okay, so we should be good. I think that env.local, which I'm not going to open, has this. So these pieces I think are there, and I won't need to worry too much about secrets. Okay, so that's updated. It is going to have some of the other pieces that we had in here that we're doing logs, trying to figure out where we actually do this. But I've kind of already did the work, so we don't need to figure that out anymore. So what we were doing here, we were doing some work to wrap it. So this piece, we don't need that wrapping anymore. We were trying to put it basically on that middleware stack. so that we would say, if you have this type of call, actually we're going to handle it with, like the socket. So send a message via the socket instead. But it's a little awkward because like we want the middleware stack to be a thing that you just run through, which with potential caveats. Like there's situations where it doesn't make sense to do that. But this like weird code path short circuit didn't feel appropriate. So what we really only need is these bits. And for our thunks.manage, what we end up doing is saying, wherever my string is, I guess we just call it OBS WebSocket. Yeah, let's do that. So we give it a key. That'll make it just easier to like reference or recall later on. And then I think we basically just do this. And that doesn't seem right. I'm not sure why that's giving us an error there. But I think we can probably just, well, I guess let's just comment it out for right now. Let's make sure we can get it working. Okay. So that cuts out a bunch of code here. We'll still need like this bit later on. But also like here, what it's doing is just, if you happen to get this type of message, then you do another put, and then there's just a whole bunch of like trying to work around this system. So we got to use WebSocket there. That's going to end up doing this, which is a sort of convoluted version now of the use WebSockets we had before. So it should actually make a connection, I think, because all this should still be valid. We'll need to like wrap it up a little bit more nicely, and potentially in a more flexible way that we can push it upstream, so I don't have to maintain it. But we will get there. I did have a change there. Did I not save that? Let's rerun this just in case again. Okay. We are gonna do this. We're gonna stage these pieces because I know I want these changes, or at least something like that, and I'm not gonna make a commit yet. But I at least want some reference to the fact that I addressed this, and if we need to roll back, we're in a position to do so. I don't really care about the schemas. Sure, just update those. And yep, that's fine. Now, and this is what we just did. I think that's in a good spot. So we're gonna like stage those just we can easily discard these next step of changes if we need to. We're potentially going to do some more work in node modules, but I guess at this point, let's just try it and see where we're at. So we'll do an npm run tori dev. We should get the new version of, or a separate version of the app pointing to its own group of files. You can see we did have a previous compiler there. We haven't changed any of the Rust bits really, so the only thing it needs to compile is the last bit that references the configuration file, which we did change. We have it configured to automatically open up our dev tools, and we're not getting anything here right now. Oh, that's kind of weird. Beat connected. Did it really just take that long to connect? Hello from ESM after a Vite config change. Function is not defined. Okay. That is not unexpected. This would be in foundation, and we were expecting function. Use WebSockets. Here's the route. It was in foundation.ts. Thunks.routes. Reference error. Function is not defined. I don't think I forgot to save. Let's do a refresh and see what happens. Okay. Oh, that's weird. So I think it's throwing it on the actual thunks.js. Yeah. So this is actually where it's throwing the error. But it's saying that it's in my foundation.ts, which is using that indirectly. Oh, okay. So this is where it comes into play. Where and this might be part of the reason we were running into issues before. So if we say this and we say force, we want that to actually here. We're gonna do a whole new one. Actually, will that work? So if we run npm tori dev, we want us to start the server, right? If I do this, what do we end up getting? Will force dash force be passed down to, yeah, and see that's the problem. Because this is the Tori CLI handling it, and it's saying, hey, we don't have a way to deal with that. So like fix your stuff. And now if I do this, we're saying the way the npm CLI works, this passes args. This should potentially also pass args. So we're passing it from the root npm runner thing to Tori, the Tori CLI with this one. And this, I think, would in turn potentially pass it down to Vite. So Vite is getting a here unexpected argument dash force. Tip: to pass force as a value, run that. What okay, Vite. Let us look at the thing we're using to run it in examples. Here, examples, patches. We want to look at the package JSON. So we had this. And we're running, oh, no, we're using this. And this is doing, this. Okay, so it actually is running npm run dev. Okay, so if we put it here, let's just see, because honestly, like it should be fine enough. We're already waiting some time for compiles. Like if we just force it to re-optimize every time, here, forced re-optimization of dependencies. That's what we wanted to see. This is the bit that's saying, hey, we updated the Vite cache to grab like your changes from node modules. That's what that's basically saying to us for this situation. So it's still starting up. I might actually turn off the dev tools. I think the Tori dev tools take a hot minute to start up. So we might end up wanting to do that real quick here, but Vite connected. There we go. There we go. Hello from ESM. Right before Keep Alive, we do some work. Okay. So now It's not actually connecting it because we give it a resource to manage and it's not doing anything with it once it is aware of it. So in this example that we had, the one that I spun up over here, the way I was testing it was it'd be in the thunks. So we're calling a thunk. When you click, okay, they got it here. When you click the button, it ends up fetching. And I basically just overloaded that function to also send a socket message. And part of that is this yield star, that is going to actually start the resource. So this is where we would kick off and start making that WebSocket connection. So we need a yield star on that actual resource to kick off the connection. The alternative to directly doing yield star is this. So register any thunks created after a signal is available. And you can see here, we're getting some of these right before keep alive. So we're getting this. Yeah, I don't think this actually runs. Because this, does this keep alive actually, yeah, I remember that now. This would be an FX supervisor JS, because this is returning a function and then it just runs. Keep alive should return it though. So keep alive is running parallel, so you can run multiple operations in parallel. You give it an array of options, and then it'll kick those off and return the results. And so it should be progressing past that. So it's a little bit weird that it's not. We might need to potentially deal with that. But before we do, we're going to do this. Because we're going to say we wanted to basically do the same thing for our resource map as well. Kick all those off and keep them alive. So we'll do a restart. Unfortunately, we have to do a restart every time because there's not a good way for it to do. We need that forced reoptimization. We need this because we want it to take the updates from our node modules. And there's not a good way to do that hot module reloading through all these different layers, at least that I can think of. Cat hair. So give that a hot minute. I think I'm going to turn off these dev tools though. We are at the moment not using them, and they're slowing down our build enough that I'm pretty sure that's what's slowing down the build there. They're slowing it down enough that it's just kind of annoying. Ooh, we were getting connection-y type stuff. Part of this is let's hope that we're not throwing it in the kind of loop that would end up crashing OBS and then the stream. But you know, I guess what that's running. I forgot to. Oh, we're getting stuff. Exception caught. Okay, so it's doing some back off stuff. Object is not iterable. This is actually from. Yeah, this is actually from Thunks use WebSocket. It is starting up the WebSocket. It is doing some work, and then it's not actually. So it's like these handshakes are all going through, but then it freaks out because I don't think we didn't write it in a way where it's going to be able to stay alive very well. We can deal with that though. What are our messages looking like? We are doing a handshake, and then we send the handshake, and then we wait for a message. And then we should be able to like, so this whole thing is in a supervisor, and it's going to like kick it off. If it fails, it's going to retry it. So that's the point of the supervisor. Um, and the supervisor with the keep alive. So we're getting an error actually internally within it. And it's saying that, can we make this bigger? Unfortunately, that hover is not. Object is not editable. This is on use WebSockets line 71, which this might be compiled stuff because there's no 71. It's at a bunch of generator stuff. Chunk, generator, use WebSocket line 71. Object is not iterable, cannot read property symbol of iterator. So there might be some situation where we're trying to iterate over something, which is, it's possible that that is what we're running into here. So let's comment that out and give it a restart. So now we've not actually changed anything in node modules, so we should be able to just refresh. We're getting errors. Can we also look at messages? Okay. We're getting messages coming through. I'm gonna kill all of these sessions actually. Yeah, close event. So each one of these is actually kicking off a new. Maybe we don't actually want to supervise these. That might be come on. All right. Are we good, OBS? Hopefully I don't break that. Your session has been invalidated. That makes sense. So it's basically like running the supervised loop, trying to keep this thing running because it keeps on failing. So for the moment, what I'm going to actually do is just say, I don't actually want to try to keep this thing alive. I really only care about this one instance. Let's get this working. We can make it more generic moving forward. But in this case, I just wanted to say, hey, let's get this thing going. And Winity, nope, 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 nope. I can never, I need to change that keybind, I think. I can never remember what, there we go. I always mispress that one. I'm not going to do it now, but I'm going to think about it. Also not right now, but like future think about it. Because these two keys, or I guess all three of these, I tend to goof these up often enough. But also I'm, in theory, don't need these because I also started playing around with the home row stuff. So I might want to have home row stuff here. And also, why do I have control twice? To-dos. those will be future me. Either way, first I need to deal with that because that's starting to get really annoying. We've got a bit here to start up that specific resource. But we don't want to
I don't really care about the return or anything right now. I just wanted to start up and be available. That's not going to quite work though. Let's debug this a little bit here first. Then we'll come back around to it. So part of the problem is there's something going on here that we need to deal with, right? We are getting the connection coming through, and some level the handshake goes through. We at least get to here where we're logging out that handshake. Then something goes wrong here. We don't need to keep retrying it. We'll just refresh our page for right now. But also if I yield here, this is not going to be, I want the yielded version in the map. So like I want the thing that I'm passing here to be the resource after I've yielded, because I want access to that handle, the return of the resource. I don't want access to the function that, to the like the resource operation itself. So that being said, let's get this working. I need a way to trigger it real quick. So I think what we'll do right now for the moment is just co-opt this add to do function here. We do a bunch of effort here, remove, set order. So I think actually what I'm just gonna do, I'm just gonna comment these bits out, and we are going to basically do what we were doing upstream here. I want to do this. Let's just yield. So when I click add, we should then get this returned. And actually, I probably need to rename this because this is not. Do I do that now? What did I name it? OBS WebSocket. That's not terribly convenient. But let's try this for the moment. It'll give us a little bit more chance to iterate. Okay, refresh, because it's not going to make, yep, it will still, because we haven't restarted. We've got that actually hard-coded in there. Yes, stop. I guess we just do that, yeah. Okay, well, that's starting up again. We're going to pull up the real one. And we are, let's add that to do. What are we doing right now? We are taking the old WebSocket and doing app.manage. Okay. That's still taking a while to connect. I'm not sure why it takes so long to start up. The forestry optimization can potentially take a little bit of time, but like it's not that long. All right, so now if we hit add, it will fire off our now modified version, which should start the resource. Oh, boo. Add. I also need to save. Okay. Very boo. So it fired it off. I didn't see any like connection stuff or anything come through. Context resources. Let's just double check we've got all of our resource map. resource map will be set and pulled in from resources. That appears to be correct. Let's log out the console dot context resources. So we should see something in there. Let's just confirm that it is actually available. There we go. Okay, so WebSocket is there with a symbol iterator. We are okay. So it should be doing the appropriate thing, right? So we have OBS WebSocket. It should be a resource. So we should be able to say yield that thing, which is basically what we're doing here. Yield context.resources.wss. We're not doing anything else fancy here. We've disabled that. We're getting the right before keep alive. See, we don't get the after keep alive, which is weird. So like, I don't think this is actually firing. Something in here is actually holding on, which is interesting. But I mean, because all we have is thunks.use, thunks.route. So this should be coming up. It's logging out the thing. I don't see any connection information though. It is coming through and it's saying we are getting a session kick. We are still seeing a close event. Oh, okay. So we did, yeah, we did turn off these bits. Got it. Yep. We're at the point where I think maybe we do this. Oh wait, no, we don't want to wait yet. Yeah. Let's try this. So we're at the point where we can iterate now. Is the short of it, because it's yielding. So it should be able to do these bits now. But why aren't we getting any of this? No. Something's off. Because we should be getting the connection here. Error event listener triggered. It is setting these up. What's interesting is we're still getting that payload coming through. Had to do. So if it's yielding off this resource, of which we can refer to it through OBS WebSocket. Like in theory, we should then have a handle to it. So like if we log out a socket here, it could be that like some of this is going out of scope and then it's just cleaning stuff up for us, which is what we want. but is not our actual intent here. Okay, so it's logging that out. We're not actually getting this returning. So it's going into and using this. So let's drop some logs here. WebSocket registered, I guess, is maybe one way to say it. This would be like WebSocket init. WebSocket open. What's D? I don't have a D. What was I doing here? Wait for hello. I don't know where this D is coming from. So that might be part of the reason that we were getting all those errors. But also, like, why is this just not working? So we should be able to kick this off. I see a session starting, but then it doesn't actually get any further. We don't see the WebSocket registered. Oh, you know what? Let's look at this. So we're giving it the resource, right? Oh, also I might not have saved. So this use WebSocket, we're firing off the function. That function should execute this. So we should see line 122, which is WebSocket registered. As soon as it like hits this line, we're not seeing that. So it's not even like getting to that point. But we might have also just not saved. So let's type. Okay. So are we seeing WebSocket registered right before keep alive, WebSocket init? Okay. And then here, yield once, socket open. We're not seeing the WebSocket open. If, or let WebSocket type of URL equals string, then do this. Otherwise, specify the URL. We're giving it a URL, which is localhost v WebSocket port. Oh, yeah. No, that's fine. Because we want to be talking to our actual WebSocket, which is at a specific port. So it's coming in. We're seeing that connection start, but we're not getting open. We're not seeing an error, and we're not seeing a close. We added these. Like ideally, this is the more affection-y way to do it. But we added these just because I wanted like some ongoing information to see what was happening, and like here you can see that. I'm actually going to chuck in a couple more of these. I just want to make sure that we are not missing any messages of stuff happening that we do indeed care about. And I think having a couple extra listeners here is not the end of the world. Open. Okay. So we'll do a refresh. Put something in here. Let's trigger it. So we get a WebSocket init. We're getting an event. Okay, we're getting the authentication challenge. This is going to the appropriate WebSocket endpoint. It's doing the salt password stuff. So we're getting to, we're not getting an open event. It could very well be that like they've updated. Is trusted true? Cancel. Okay. Because there's also this authentication stuff down here. So if, oh, I also have a message handler here. Let's, oh, here's a D. D is a record. Okay. I'm not sure. Let's just get rid of that for the moment. Let's add that message listener here a little bit up above of where we had it originally. So that will say, so if there's a message data, then it sets D equals data. And we have and we've got a D right there, right? It's used before it's assigned. It's not, I think it's like freaking out with the, I don't think that's correct. I think it, I think it's just confused. Okay, so we got a D op. This would be the, we're setting D equals data there and messages send. So we get a message, we parse it, and then if it has a message.data, then we just send the message back. Okay, let's look at the opcode stuff. I think we're close. And we can wire up the managed stuff a little bit, potentially, but we kind of need the actual connection to exist before doing any of that actually ends up being useful. So we got an opcode, we got RPC, the authentication stuff. What am I doing? I'm copying this down because that opened up on the other monitor. So the opcode 0 is sent from OBS when it's freshly connected. So we will get this, which is this bit here, right? So we'll get this. And so if it's required, we'll get this. It is required because we have authentication turned on. So we do need to do the authentication step. So we would say, so yield once on socket message. So when we get a message in, then we're logging out D. But I don't have, it's like we're getting this. Oh. I mean, it still says that it's being used before it's assigned, but like it's there. So that's still weird, but I also don't like the way that this is organized. So again, we'll have to like reorganize it. But you know, all right. So we're logging out D from line 143, and data. So data is parsing message. Oh, I wonder if this like changed slightly from when we first did it. Did I update OBS? I don't think I updated OBS. I mean, if I did, I need to be more careful with that. Which is like this might be part of the reason that the 3D is broken. So we are listening for messages here, and then we are like setting this value, which is not a great way to do it. We would be able instead to say yield once on socket.message. I think it can return. Target returns an operation that yields the next emitted event. So like, does it include the event is my question. Do we need to do anything when we hear back? Well, let's look here. So response to the hello message should contain authentication string if authentication is required, along with pub sub subscriptions and other session parameters. So we need an event. Oh, by default, all event categories are subscribed except for the events marked as high volume. Okay. So what I was doing is I was basically just sending a message back with the exact same information so as to do the authentication step basically. But we did have opcode 0. So we would need to mutate it as such. So, all right. We're getting the net. We're doing a bunch of logs. I will still do this logging here, but I don't actually want to do anything else with it. Let me see if it comes through here. If we say const test, am I getting a value when I yield once? Test. If I'm getting this back, that will work well, because what we're basically saying is we want to fire off the thing, add a bunch of listeners, and then we're just going to like wait for the message to come through. So once the message comes through, then we could potentially react to it. Refresh, bloop, 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 and go. So we are getting on line 1. Oh, we need the test. I also need to save. I hit the shortcut for save, I think, but I must have, or I attempted to, but I must not have pressed the right key. WebSocket init. So we're never getting to. We are like, this isn't actually firing, which is weird. We're setting this up, add the event listener, and like that works. We are getting this. This is what we're expecting to see. On line 131, open. Okay, so we're getting our open event. Yep, type open. It could be something with this yield once. So let's do this. We're gonna say this. If we get a message, if it has message.data, I mean it's basically all these bits, right? We can potentially nest it by the type. There might be some like run loop stuff here where since we're adding all these event listeners, we don't establish those until. No, but we're getting the message. It's coming through there. Why is it not coming through? That is so odd. Okay, well, we'll just do this for the moment. If it is coming through, and op is 0, so we're getting a message. Oh, okay, message.data. So, let's do this. What am I doing? What am I doing? Let's do this. So if we say this, 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 we're not going to bother with that. We're just going to respond to it all online. And we're going to say, here's our data. If we get data back, so like if this actually is a value, we're going to say switch on data dot op, and we need to consider some cases. Default is just going to be a no op. I guess I can say that explicitly. And then we will do a case 1. That will be a, or if we get a 0, then we need to respond. So if we get case 0, then we need to respond with so we are, let's see, new WebSocket. If we have a URL, protocols. Okay, so this should be, we're going to have to like, we've basically just done this all with events, and I've avoided writing infection here. So we're sending that to the signal. We're not actually responding back. Call socket.send. Yeah, so this would be like the handshake back. So if it's a case 0, we need to then respond with this handshake, which is actually what we're doing here. So I see what we're doing here. Okay. So we are saying, yeah, okay. So data is yield authentication hash. What are we doing with authentication hashing? Oh my, yeah, okay. Okay. The problem is the yields aren't going to work very well, and that's not going to work very well in our switch either. Okay, so we'll say, I see what I did before. We'll put it that way. Data.parse. So whenever we get this, we're basically we were previously just reassigning D, which fine. Okay, log that out. D is that. Then D is right here. So Okay, do your thing, assign it, and these, we don't actually want to fire those off until we have D set. So like we would need to wait somehow until we can do these bits. And the problem, can I do an async? Let's just try it real quick. And then I'm gonna just end up having to like reorder all of this. Let's see. Well, actually here we'll copy and paste. We'll do this, we'll do this, and let's just try to get a handshake going. All right, so our handshake ends up being WebSocket code identify with D for data, and this is going to be our new data. This is going to be incoming. We want to say if incoming.rpc version is this and that. Data.authentication. Here we need to do in await authentication hashing and that and that. Oh, this is itself. Yeah, okay. Gosh. I remember doing all this now. I really don't want to like mess around with this because I got like a minute, but I really want to just get this working real quick. Oh wait. And oh wait. Go away. To and authentication hashing. We will comment all you out. And then all we need to do is this. We need to send it, and hopefully we then get a good handshake. And then I guess I need to come back and affectionize it a little bit more. Add. Cannot read properties of undefined reading salt. So we should be getting a D dot. Oh, it's in there. Incoming dot D dot. Okay, your payload's data is missing in RPC version. Data, opcode, D data, RPC version, incoming, oh, D dot RPC version. Is that it? We got an opcode too. Okay. We got a little bit more playing back and forth a little bit. I want to make this more generic because having the ability to do the handshake stuff upstream would be very nice. And we, as far as I know, we don't. And also, like, I put in these event listeners previously just to make sure we weren't catching anything, but I need to affectionize this a little bit because this is not fun to work with. I might do a little bit of that off stream though. That's where we're going to call it today though. Let's close this for now. We're going to pull up this actual thing. So we were taking the old WebSocket and doing an app manage. We can call that done. We're going to flop over here. I got to run to a meeting. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Next week, Chrome embedded in Tori. I'm excited. I'm excited to see where these things are going to be leading, and exciting for the stream next week. And then we might end up doing a few follow-up streams from that to probably try it in the To-Do app. And then we might take a break from the To-Do app because we've been doing a lot of stuff with it lately, and change of pace would be nice. Have a great rest of your week. Happy Tuesday. See you next time for CEF. Bye.